Okay, welcome everybody to our study session. Today is Tuesday, February 28th. It's 4:55 p.m. We are convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education, and we're meeting at 280 West 940 North in Provo. And we will begin with a roll call. I'm Rebecca Nielsen, Board President.
Jennifer Partridge, Vice President.
Melanie Hall, Board Member.
Lisa Boyce, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
Meg Van Wageningen, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Keith Rachel, Superintendent.
Thank you so much, and we welcome all of our guests and our employees that are here with us tonight. And I will entertain a motion to convene our study session.
I move we convene the study session.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Hales. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Board Member Boyce. I have to say that so slow to not mess it up. It throws me every time. All right, perfect. Okay, we will go ahead and start with a board handbook training today. We are going to give the time to Jennifer Partridge to do that for us.
Okay, thank you. So today for the training, I decided to go with the School Board Professional Governance Standards that we got at our USBA convention. So the Board of Directors worked on this all year last year, like literally. We started in April, and every meeting we talked about it and refined things, and as you guys know, we brought it to our regional meetings in the fall. So it's been very deliberate on what are good practices for board members, and so I thought it would just be good for us to go over. Today we're just going to do one section of them, and then in future trainings we can go over other ones. So it's attached in board docs if you want to follow along. So on that, it's the second page. On the paper one, it's just the inside part. But I thought we'd start with the first one, which is respectful. So the first says to approach role with integrity. What do you guys think that means? Like, what does that mean to you?
Being honest and direct and straightforward.
Good. Yeah, Gina.
I think kind might be a little too strong of a word, but as you are engaging in conversations, whether you agree or disagree, that you are doing it in a way that is respectful. I don't know how else to say it, but that is kind. Yeah, civil. So you're not being argumentative just to be argumentative, or because it's something you're really passionate about.
Perfect. And that goes with the next bullet point. Treat board members, families, employees, students, and community members with dignity and consideration. And so I think it's important for us to value different points of view, no matter which of those groups we're interacting with. That people have different perspectives, we all have different strengths, and to recognize that and to show that consideration. And then in regards to with board members, it reminded me something I remember Keith saying when I was a new board member. I don't know if he said it to the rest of you, but no surprises. Like when we come to board meeting, you know, if there's a big concern you want to bring up or an issue, like let's have a little heads up so people can be prepared and be ready for that discussion for that. So the third bullet point, listen to and acknowledge stakeholder input, and we are having great practice at that right now with all the wonderful stakeholder input that we're doing. And I think just to remember that there is a difference between listening and acknowledging. That doesn't mean that we act on every input that we get. We can't, because one person's going to tell you to do A and someone else is going to say, well, I want you to do B, and they're in direct opposition, right? So we hear that sometimes from some, well, you didn't listen to me. Well, we can listen, we can acknowledge, we can weigh what we're hearing, and then it's our responsibility to use all that information to make the best decision we can for our students, our teachers, our public. And then the last one, to safeguard confidentiality. So just remember that everything we talk about in executive session has to stay confidential completely. But also just remember that there are certain conversations you're having. It might be with a stakeholder that they want you to keep something confidential, or you know, with a one-on-one conversation, just to keep that. So any questions?
I just thought of something, just because now I'm thinking about the word integrity. One thing that I am trying to learn is to make sure that what I say and what I do are, you know, in congruence. That who I say I am or how I represent something with a stakeholder or with board member or with teacher and employee is congruent with the way I'm acting. And I think that's really important that we are consistent. in that
Same
way.
type of person
Yeah, that
in
we
every
have integrity
situation.
in that sense of what we say and what we do, that they're in alignment.
Thank you.
Because in that way, when people don't, if like you have a conversation, you don't necessarily agree, that people can still trust in the
Yeah.
integrity that I don't agree with you, but I also trust that you are acting in accordance with what you're saying.
Correct.
And yeah,
Yeah.
fosters that kind of mutual respect because
Yeah, you know where you stand with respect to that person.
yeah, even if you don't agree.
Okay, thanks so much, Jennifer. We'll move on to item number 5 on our study session, which is it's labeled Dixon Plans. We're going to be talking about the future of the current Dixon Middle School property. And what we're talking about here, what we planned on doing today in regards to this, was trying to outline a process or a framework of exactly how we would like to go about planning the future of the current Dixon property. So we got an email that showed some of the top needs in the district. We don't necessarily need to go over specific needs yet, but I think that kind of helps with our discussion. But what we need to do is outline that process. So how do we start this? Where's a good place to start?
I think we put everything on the table.
Okay. Thoughts on processes?
So I've asked for feedback from the community about the process. I think a lot of people got hung up on, which rightfully so, what they want in the building, but there's a couple of pieces of information or just general things that I think would be good. One was, so here are some of the words that kind of stood out to me. The process needs to be transparent. We need to be looking at long range, not just what the immediate needs are, but long range. It needs to be strategic, fair, effective, with vision, and then all of these things need to lead to quality education, you know, that our community is investing in. And so I think those are, that's what I have seen. Anyone who's talked about process has talked about making sure that that it's strategic planning for long-term use and that it's transparent seem to be the two biggest ones.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate that. Okay. So keeping those things in mind as far as a starting point and where we want to go with it, are we interested in getting perhaps more detailed info on the needs of the district? We can start there.
In my opinion, and same with other people I've talked to about this, we can't really have a good conversation if we don't know what the needs in the district are, because we just can't. And so I think that might be, for me anyway, that's where I think a good place to be was what are the needs of the district, and then how Dixon could fit into those, potentially fit into those.
Okay.
Which I think is part of the strategic planning, the long range that we were talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think we need some information gathering.
Info gathering.
The needs, costs associated with anything.
Right, because part of any plan, we're going to have to discuss cost and where we're going to be able to get money to do whatever we decide we need to do with this.
And the benefit with each thing, like the cost and the benefit, because we do have a mandate to make sure that our resources are directed in a way that ensure and support student success and our teachers, and do you know what I'm saying? So
I think with going along with that benefit, one of the things you brought up is like long term.
Yeah.
Like, is this something that's going to be long term in that building, or is it a really big benefit for it moving there?
Kind of the parameters we have, if we are doing, I agree with a long term, but we might have to do a short term to get to a long term. So just, what can we do immediately?
And that's like using the parts of the building that are usable.
Right, like we just need to know all those, make sure we're clear with all those details.
in terms of process and info gathering, one of the pieces of info I would like to understand more about is the current state of the Dixon property, and, you know, what kind of just in terms of its structural integrity and in terms of, that helps me. I don't maybe know the history as well as
I
some of
think
you
that
guys.
will also go with that parameter, right,
Yeah.
like what can we do with the structure.
So who can gather, who do we go to for gathering that info?
I've got the construction of Dixon already, the architectural plans and when the analysis was done by KMA, also lining out what area of the building was built in when.
Okay.
But some
I have
parts,
the book of that still from
Yeah.
2015, I'll bring it in.
but some of the parts of, like, that are newer are in worse shape than older parts of, like, so like.
That's true.
So
Newest
correlate.
sections, however, are
Yeah.
not.
Depends on the year, right?
It
The
depends
90s
on the
edition
section of the
90s.
building. There are some newest sections that we've had just theoretical conversations about, could we put them to use when the buildings are vacated? So, for example, finding a home for East Bay Post High School or something like that. We do have newer sections of that building that could be used pretty much as soon as it's vacated. But not the entire building, because some aspects of that building are pretty rough. They're well past their lifespan.
And do we have like the appraisals of that, like specifically why those parts aren't, or you know what I mean, like the rating, that
I've got all
earthquake
that stuff in my
rating, yeah.
office. Yeah.
I think going back to knowing the needs in the district, we just want to hear like details, like
Right.
where are they at currently, what's not working, what ideally would they want to have.
Mhm.
So you're talking about short and long-term facility needs?
I'm talking, so we're looking at the list
Space
we've got like, the adult ed program, okay, they're currently in portables. How much space would they want to have, you know? How would
And
they
what could
utilize that
what could
space?
they do if they
What square
had more
footage?
space? What could they, right, what's their
Mhm.
current square footage? What could they do if they had more space, right? I have a quick question for the board. We talked about, I'm taking notes here, talking about info gathering and the cost associated with it. Can we define what it is? Are we talking about cost associated with remodeling the building to accommodate that?
Remodeling and reusing the building.
Okay, so that cost that's associated with it isn't gonna necessarily be program specific, right? Or would it be?
Sort of like a building cost, like
Building in
infrastructure, like
general.
a capital, yeah,
Okay.
capital cost.
Some of
yeah.
it would
Do
be,
we-
no, some of it would be, right? If
Some
you're
of it
gonna
might be
move
if you
caps
need-
in there, caps is
Sure.
gonna have a certain set of needs that are gonna carry with them a certain set of costs that might be unique, so some of that is, right?
Okay, so we're looking at just certain costs that are gonna be unique to putting that program
Because
in
we
the
don't wanna
building,
just
right?
update the building and then try to
Right.
fit these
So that's
things
what I'm saying,
into
so
the
when we
spaces
get,
we just changed.
like our next report, when all this info is gathered and someone comes to tell us all about it, do we want to know the cost of remodeling the building in general, or do we wanna know the cost of like specific programs that might, like costs it might add to like a remodel?
I think we
Right.
both start
Start both.
This is our
General.
process and
Yeah, so
like
maybe
where
we
do-
just start with just the needs and
That
maybe
that
not
would
cost
be my
yet?
recommendation is start with the needs of what it is that we're wanting, because those needs should drive the conversation of what is feasible or not feasible with this building.
Mhm.
Because ultimately that will drive the conversation of tear this whole thing down and build one that is specific for all these needs, or yes, we can essentially bring the building up to architectural integrity and still house these there and have it be less than a new building. That to me is where you start with the programs that you want and are needing there to get an idea of what the building should have in it in the end.
I think we
Okay,
should
great.
also put on the table, though, that probably a quarter to a third of the first floor is the newer section. That's the amount that we could potentially look at reusing without an awful lot of remodeling.
Bingo, correct.
So there would be severe limitations and restrictions about how many kinds of programs we could put in there, or what kinds of programs and what their needs would be. But, so just as a general rule, I just want to caution us against getting too excited about, wow, we've got a whole building available.
Mhm.
We've got about a quarter to a third of that first floor that could be made very usable because of the years in which it was built.
In the short term.
In the short term.
Well, or even in the long term, probably short term is the reality because you're not gonna keep a quarter of a building and have the rest lay dormant.
Yeah.
Right? So it has to be kind of a temporary setting, and then we think about, so what do we do in the long term?
Did you have a comment or question, Gina?
Yeah, there's been feedback, which is very appropriate, I think, that I think as we have these conversations, we need to be pretty transparent about what does usable mean, because we said that the old Provo High was condemned and we couldn't, it was not safe, but it's being used by other people, and so we need to, I think for the public, we need, so in my mind, the reason is, it really, for the safety of students, if an earthquake happened or whatever, it wouldn't be safe, but other people are using it, so we have to figure out how to message this so that they understand why it's not usable, why we can only use 1/4 to 1/3 or whatever, and make sure that we're very transparent about that, because I get it, I get the concerns, and I think that will help us as we communicate with the city, with our residents.
Yeah. So I just want to add, at some point in the process, and we can kind of figure out when that is, I think we do need to involve community members, because this is going to be, there's so many possible good uses for this site that we need more than just 7 of us figuring that
Absolutely.
out. And so where do we bring them in? They're going to need to know a lot of these details that we're asking for. And then who is that? Is that people who just live near the building? Is it our whole community?
I wanted to throw out the same thing. I know we're going to start with the needs, and we don't necessarily have to define this quite yet, but I do want to say it sometime in the future as well. We need to bring the public in, and I wanted to throw out a couple ways what that could look like. We could have a committee full of citizens helping work on different things. We could have surveys go out, but then also the who. We need to remember that this directly affects the neighborhood that's in there, but it also directly affects taxpayers if there's going to be any, there's going to be expense involved. So it's going to directly affect every taxpayer. So those are things we'll need to think about for sure and define better and how we want to involve them.
One community member, and we don't have to do this necessarily, but one community member did ask for surveys. I think the community seems to be very happy with the way that we have done the superintendent search. And so they're asking for something similar. And I think that the new neighborhood district meetings, the District 5, which is where Dixon and Timpanogos is, I think we can use that as to make sure they get the information. And we can also do it for the other ones. I do think it needs to be laser focused on them, but that doesn't mean we neglect everybody else. But the exactly surrounding neighborhoods, and funnily enough, I don't know what that word would be. There's 3 of us. There's 3 board members who are in District 5. So I feel like we should, that's our district.
Yeah.
And so I think between the 3 of us, we can make it to these meetings and make sure that we're answering questions and things, which I think will be very helpful once we get to that point.
Okay. So then it sounds like from here, what we'll do is we'll start with, we'll try and get a pretty detailed report on the needs of the district, and we can start even working on gathering costs associated with programs, benefits associated with each program, how it would affect us and them long term. We want details on what can be done with the building immediately, and the reasoning behind why and why not, / current state of the property, and we want to be able to also define the word usable. So that kind of goes with those last 2 as well. Current state of the property, what we can do with the building, why, and exactly why certain things are usable. Does that sound good?
One thing I don't know, because I don't know it, is the history in terms of communicating around this site. But I do think that is helpful to include in the information gathering. Have there been past promises made, or just even how have we communicated in the past, and how can we be informed by that, not determined by that, but informed by that, and make sure that with integrity we are approaching the solution moving into the future.
I don't think any promises have been made. The only thing I can say is that every board that I've been part of has said we don't want to sell the property.
Okay. So that's what I'm just saying, like,
So-
just as we gather the information, if we
Yeah.
just understand what has been communicated so that we communicate, you know, in a transparent way as we're making new decisions, we're sharing the information coming in that we have, we're listening, you know what I mean? That's all.
And that's very important, also very tricky, because what one person says and another person hears, and what
Right,
different
that's
people
right,
hear.
right.
And so I think we need to look at that, but we also need to take everything with a grain of
Right.
salt, because everybody is looking at this from their own viewpoint. But I think
Right.
it is important for us, if we can learn from our past and apply what we're learning to what we're doing now, I think we can get more community buy-in.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. We'll get that on another agenda. Derek, how long do you think, or Keith, info gathering like this should take? Could we do this again in another month? Could we do this again in 2 weeks? Could we do this? When's a likely time we could have all of that information put together and have a report to the board?
We can probably do it in tiers. Now, when I say that, what I mean is, we can get the internal information for you in terms of contracting with an architect or someone who can really come in and do a full advisement of us. We have older reports, and it probably would be appropriate for us to spend a little money and get some updated reports. So that could take, I would imagine that could take 2 or 3 months, but it's not like you've got nothing else going on in that time.
Right.
But I think it would be good to let the community know, this is what we're doing, this is what we're targeting, we want to come back to this in June or August or whatever.
So could we particularly, like in particular, the needs of the district, have reports on that?
So that's, my recommendation would be to push this to one of the committees and let the committee essentially run with a lot of the work in terms of gathering the data, setting up the committee, or the committee where we are getting input from other people and things like that. And so that way it's not, there's a lot of work that's still happening behind the scenes, and they can come back and just update the committee's higher up.
Okay, so I still don't feel like I have an answer though on the timeline.
My guess is
Like what's
probably 3 months is a good timeline to keep.
3 months before
Yeah.
we meet back again
Yeah.
about this particular.
So May?
I think that.
Or
Probably
can we
June.
get it in
June?
phases?
Yeah, because
Could we say
May's
these
crazy.
3
June?
departments were ready to tell you what they would need, and then
How do you want to run it? Because if you want each department to come and tell the board what their needs are,
Each group.
it's going to look a lot different. And that's why, to me, I think running it through the committee is the right route. Because it can just run on its own autonomously through the committee, that then brings the board in updates once a month as the process is happening.
And then, so if we bring it back to have a board discussion maybe in June or whatever, but if the board would like a quick update, then maybe we could just throw that on the agenda. It could just be a quick item to say this is what's happening.
Yeah.
But I
The
think
board
as far as a
reports to
really deep
superintendent.
conversation, maybe June. And June's nice because school's out. Not that we still don't have anything to do when school's
Right.
out, but at least
It's
we're
a little
not,
different.
it's not hanging right here over our
Right.
heads.
Okay, so then we can expect to meet particularly about this again sometime in
And
May
if
or
we can
June.
speed it up, we will.
Okay.
But that buys us the amount of time we probably need for this.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Anybody else? Any comments, questions, or anything?
Real quick, just
Like-
like looking at our possible needs, like thinking of them in relation to like long-term strategy, I do continue to hear, and I personally, sometimes feel concerned about our middle schools and the size. And I think that that's not on this list, but I know, Todd, you passed the information on, but this recommendation that 9th grade should be pulled back into middle school. I know that's a big topic to throw here, but I would like to see that be part of
The discussion.
the discussion of I know we're building, Shoreline, we have said it's going to be big enough to grow into, but we've also said we're not a growing district. So I guess okay, that's 2 different ideas, but I'm concerned about 2 big middle schools when I do think we need to address some things in our middle schools. It seems like there's concerns just like crowdedness, and anyway, so I guess I just would like to see maybe that part of possibilities is just discussing that, and I think that is like a long-term view, right?
And I think that's where the committees come in. So that's where you could go into the committee and say, here's some concerns. As you guys are doing this, could you please take this into consideration? I think. We haven't had the committee discussion yet.
That's next.
We're getting there.
That's a great segue.
All right. Okay, thank you, Meg, for those comments. And speaking of committees, let's move to item number 6 on our study session. This is the proposed committee structure changes. We are so grateful to Gina, who has volunteered to head up this discussion, and also thank you, Gina, for being willing to really put in a lot of background time and work into this. So you're the perfect person to head up this discussion, so I'm going to just turn this time to you.
Okay, so Bonnie's going to put it up here, I believe, and there's some copies here that I think we can give. I sent you guys a copy earlier today. Probably no one was on their computer right before we got there. But board, you do have it in your email. I sent you something, so you do have a digital copy in case we need to give those. And then Bonnie's going to put it up here. So basically, the background of this is I've been working with Jennifer and Rebecca with input from Keith and Derek and a few people here and there. We've been working trying to figure out how can we make committees more useful for everybody, and how can we make it so that it helps our district run more smoothly. And after we had all these conversations, the 3 of us on the board met, and we made 9 committees, and I had a nice little graph that is not nearly as nice as Keith's graph here, but I'm very proud that at least was a stepping stone to Keith. And so we came up with like 9 committees.
It was an inspiration.
And so we came up with 9 committees with a bunch of subcommittees, but you're going to hear my bias, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, but I really like the ideas that are here, and I think that this is a great start. As it says there, I requested the draft be put in there because this is not final, but this is, we are, in my opinion, we're moving in the right direction. So that's kind of the background. So here are, and in your email you have this, but there's 4 things that we can talk about here. I know we're short on time, but basically overall thoughts and feedback about the structure. Do we like the tiers? Do we have the right people attending the meetings? Number 2 would be thoughts and feedbacks about the actual committees. Are the committees in the right tiers? Do we need to switch any around? I particularly am unclear about strategic planning. I know everybody's explained it to me 10 times. I still don't get it. And so we need to look at that. We're also missing a few things. We have HR that's not on there, and we have legislative committee, and my guess is there's others that I am not picking up that are missing from that. Number 3 would be what is the reporting structure, but I really think the reporting structure would be from not the bottom up, but from the yellow up. And then communication between the committees, and then what the next steps need to be is kind of the overall thing. So basically the top tier is 2 or 3 board members on each one of the top tier. These are kind of just like the big pieces. And then whatever we need from there, we would then pass on to our tier 2 committees. So the top tier would be board members, 2 or 3 board members, plus the BA and or the superintendent, whichever we need on those, or both. And possibly some members of executive committee or executive council, whatever it's called, wherever we would need those. The next tier, there are 7, so we would each serve on one of these. And then, so these would be run typically by a member of the executive council, or a director of a program. And then those would have what I would call subcommittees, which were the yellow, which would be different ones underneath there, that would, like some of these committees we're talking about for facilities, would be in there. And so this way, the board members are being useful and we're being there, but we're also not, number 1, being worn out. Well, we'll probably get worn out anyway, but we won't have as many committees to sit on as the other model that we had. And the other thing is, I think sometimes things change. When a board member walks in the room, it's like the whole thing changes. So it's like, I think there needs to be stuff that happens without a board member there. There are some of these that I think if we have specific interests or something, we may be able to sit on some of those committees, but that is the general structure of this. And so overall thoughts and feedback about the structure.
Gina, let me just add,
sure. Yep.
In terms of board member workload, every board member would be on one of the green level committees, and then every board member would be connecting with one of the red level committees. Okay, so that would be a maximum of 2 committee assignments.
Okay. So I have some questions and comments. Okay, so on the model that we put together, like these red sub-level committees were directly underneath one of the green. So
Uh-huh.
is there a direct tie? Like, does employee well-being fit directly under students and family, right? Like, does that make sense? Is there?
That's a good question, and this is
So-
what the executive, and thank you to Keith and Derek and to the executive council for, I hear it was a 3-hour meeting.
Oh my.
A couple of them.
Thank you for your work.
So, and the discussion around this was that not necessarily that any one of those directly reports to any of the other ones, because there's going to be pieces of operations and finance in student achievement, in policy, and there's the same thing. There's going to be finance and data as part of academics, as part of student and family,
Right.
and as part of operations. And so really it's a multi-tiered approach that is trying to enhance communication towards the areas and aligning it with where the information should flow.
Okay, so then my question then is, because you were talking about who is attending, so I see generally who's attending, but when we actually start making assignments or whatnot, does that mean you end up just going to every one, since there's like a piece, do you know what I mean? Like, for us, I get that it lightens our load, but does it
What's it
make
do
it
for
worse
executive?
for everyone else?
And so perfect example, if you take finance and data, let's say I have Devin running that committee, okay? Devin has something that is happening over the academic committee, right? That's finance and data related. Devin would then go to that committee, report to it on that one time, and then go back, and then never go back again. So it's not necessarily everybody's going to everything all the time. It's, hey, we have some need up at this committee for this person who's heading this committee. So bring that information up. Can you go down and look into this and report back to us? So it's not a one person is everything going to all. It's effectively you're able to call up. We need people from this committee over here. We need people from this committee over here.
So it can change based on what you're
You have a core
discussing.
structure as part of your
Okay.
committee, and then other people who are invited in based off of the needs that committee needs.
So the dotted line is district council, and district council kind of serves as the connective tissue between everything up there. And that's part of our role, is to make sure that we're facilitating communication in all directions.
So yeah, that was one of my concerns with this, is I don't want everyone to have more of a burden, but I also am hoping that it brings more communication between departments and groups and committees and whatnot than maybe we
And maybe
currently
even
have.
collaboration, right?
Right, maybe
A
even
little
more
bit.
collaboration, right.
Well,
So
direct answer to your question, bluntly, it probably will mean a little bit more work for council. Not a tremendous amount more work, but a little bit. So, I mean, we haven't tried the structure, so
Yeah.
it's worth trying to see how it functions and then tweak it as time goes by.
But apparently they were okay with some of the general idea? Nobody dares say no. Never mind. I won't.
I do have a question before you answer that. So, it's because maybe that you've already discussed this, so you could answer, but I just wondering, like, it looks like the green tier might just be creating extra meetings that we don't need, and if we just have the red tier be our committee level, and then council meeting is your way to kind of coordinate between some of all of that? Did you guys discuss that, or?
We did, but because the 3 board members or 2 board members were a part of those ones, that and that was kind of the discussion, is that, you know, we're having high-level conversations with the 2 and 3 board members, with Keith and I, then also helping direction and strategically plan and around those things. Then, you know, if you eliminate that, it would essentially revert back to this council group having conversations around everything, and in terms of when we have our normal monthly meetings, or bi-weekly meetings.
So it's
one of the things that I picked up over the years is that it really is important to have executive level sponsorship, and this is the executive, the true executive of this district. So if you can be involved in those high level things that we're working on, that helps to grease the skids about getting those things in place. It's just a management practice
And
that
also,
works.
also by questions from the public, they'll be more informed as to what's going on with the operations of finance, student, family, things like that.
Do you feel that's more effective in those bigger categories than just having us each go to the red level?
Well, we think so. I mean, it's probably time to try it.
To me,
It
it would
matches
be,
better what our role's supposed to be. We're not supposed to be micromanaging into the details. Right?
and
So-
to me, it would be a summary of information that you can be hammered out in an hour, right? Versus you're going to be going potentially to an hour, right? You'd end up being in a lot more meetings to get the same level of
We'd have to
information.
get you offices around here.
Yeah, can I see if I'm understanding this right? So yeah, what it sounds to me is like these green top tier, by breaking it up like either 2 or 3 board members as part of each one of those, some of the things that we like discuss here, but then I'm like, okay, we have to put it off because we didn't get to it. We're not having meet. Okay, I'm not articulating well, but that we are able to have an understanding of what's going on, get background
Deeper
information,
conversations.
and then when we have to make decisions, we kind of have all that
Already
in
have
there
it because
here
you've already
because we've
detailed.
kind of been working in these committees. So it's not like we have to do all this work here only to push it off than to have another meeting.
Correct. It would make these
Yeah.
meetings go a lot more efficient, and you're more well prepared to vote on the things that come your way.
Yes, I appreciate that.
So a couple of just,
You said.
Got like
That's
just like a little fuzzy on
thing.
it.
Okay.
Awesome. I guess a couple little in the weeds questions here as I'm looking at these. So things like the Provo Foundation, adult ed, would
We have to,
Be separate still kind of
we
from
we
this.
still have assignments for other things.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Those
we really
would
need
be
to
assignments.
take a lot of what we have out there right now
Okay.
amorphously and slide it in here
Okay.
and see if it'll fit the structure.
Right.
And you need to do the same. If you can give some thought to where does this go? And then we'll just have to negotiate our way through this and make sure
Okay.
for our purposes it'll work.
And I know we're not saying like, this is not giving too much meaning around importance, but there isn't a green bubble at the top that says teachers and employees. And is that, I see employee well-being down here, I guess the red level. I just,
Where does
it's
that?
such a priority, I feel like supporting our teachers. So I guess that will just,
No,
this
that's
isn't
good.
saying
No, no,
priorities,
that's
but
good
I'm
feedback.
just thinking about like,
Yeah, or are
Teaching
they
and
part
learning,
of
especially
it?
academics,
Are they
etc.
part of academics?
Yeah.
Yes,
We need
okay.
to define them.
That-
Or if
yeah.
we want to take the whole battery of HR committees and turn that into a green level and maybe, slide some
Employee
of the
well-
red levels into it.
So
into the employee well-being level, or what are you saying?
Just create a new bubble up on the top
Okay.
green level.
So we'd have 4 instead of 3, or take out operations?
I'm just thinking out loud.
how
that's all.
about we get feedback, like board members, we get it to those of us who are on the committee, maybe Gina.
Just send it to me.
Gina,
Send it to me.
and then we can work on it.
Committee.
Send it to the committee's committee.
Committee. It's an ad hoc committee.
That's right.
And the one thing to me, this is discussion categories.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really all it is it's discussion categories. Where should we be having a discussion about, and how does the information flow at that point? And so, operations is going to be maybe too broad of a category. And maybe it's not. Maybe it is the correct description. But there'll be pretty much any number of conversations around all of our academic learning, right? Meaning,
Teaching and learning, yeah.
yes, all of our conversations around what our students and the families and how we support them. All of our conversations around our operations and
Okay.
payroll,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Snow days. So essentially, it's just conversation points is what it is.
You're going to solve snow days differently now that I'm gone?
They're going to get up
We are
at
gonna
3
put-
a.m., Keith, instead of 4.
We are going to put in the Vegas-style concrete everywhere to try to heat this place up so much that we don't get snow down here.
Okay, good luck.
All right, so where are we?
Sorry, I have one more. So I'm just trying to understand. So like, let's say in the academic portion, we're talking and we want to know some certain outcomes with a program or curriculum, then we could go down to one of these red and say, okay, student achievement, we need this information. Is
That's
that
exactly
what
what
you
it
mean?
is. So
Or
that committee
how are
then-
teachers doing, employee well-being, can you give us
That
some
makes
information on what our teachers are
Correct.
needing? And
So-
come back to the academic
Bingo.
committee, and then we have that information to make decisions.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. Each of us are going to be one of the 3 green. This is a new extra meeting.
And
on top of what we
one of
I'm
the
just
red.
I'm just trying to set the stage. I think they're going to be good meetings. How often are we?
That was what I was
to
gonna
be
ask,
meeting?
how often?
I think that's yet to be determined.
Yeah, I think we have to hammer the rest out before we can see how often they would be. But if you've got 2 or 3 board members on the green ones, if a board member can't make it,
Yeah, right.
So here's how, this is just my guess on the green ones is they're once a month
still gonna go
or once every couple months.
for the green?
Yes.
And how about the red?
The reds are gonna be a little more often, where they're once a month or once every other week or every week kind of.
That's fine.
So it's kind of a high level direction. Red turns into more action oriented, right? And so you're a lot rarer on the green, more regularly on the red. is
So
the way
I
see
guess
it.
Lisa and I were just talking. Where I'm confused is we all are on different committees right now. Are we trying to see where the committees we're on fit into the red right now?
If there's something that, you mean right now in the conversation?
Because like our other committees don't go away with this.
PTA
Correct.
and
PTA, I'm on MTech.
Correct. So-
PTA,
Yeah,
so
call
that's-
it- those
so
will be called
that's-
assignments.
So that's
Yeah.
what you want to send to me. Where does this fit? I'm on MTech.
Or
Does it
like
fit in here?
Sex ed, where would that fit?
Caps.
Or where
Right.
caps? Or where
So
does
those are all yellow level kinds of things.
And that's-
But if it has a board member on it, generally it would be red. So
Yeah.
the question is,
Do
can
we
we
need?
fit all of them into the red
So,
boxes
and maybe that's
there?
what we need to understand
And
better.
well, and here's the thing too. So let's say caps. You have caps as an example. Is caps is a yellow. Put down here as a yellow. We have a caps committee that has a lot of discussion, and then they bring things up. And let's say we're putting it under student achievement, right? So whoever is part of that student achievement committee can then have the caps go give them, go research this. We need this information. Bring it back to the red committee, so that way you're still. It's all it is exactly what you said. Slotting in where you think information should be housed and flowing, but it's not restrictive, just like we talked about with the reds and greens, is there may be
Still big categories.
some.
Yeah.
Still big.
So the other thing I want to say about that, Melanie, is this can be a way to consolidate and eliminate some of the other things that we think. Because CAPS doesn't necessarily, like if CAPS is a yellow, that just tells us we determine it's a yellow. They don't need a board member. Right? So maybe that's something to think about, is if it's a yellow level thing, maybe that's not where a board member should be, right?
I've already thought of a couple committees that
And I'm not
that's-
saying, I'm not trying to take CAPS from you, because I'm
No.
on CAPS, like I was like, I want to keep
I
doing
had
it,
to
but I'm
give
just
it to
saying.
her. I didn't want to give
Oh,
it
that's
away.
right. I'm just saying, like, maybe that will help us define, like,
I know.
more that stuff we just don't need to be involved in.
And then if we choose to be more involved, then we can be, but it's not
But then
an
that's on
assignment.
us,
Yeah, 'cause
right?
you
If
kinda
we
say
choose to
that
go to those
if
extra
you're
meetings, that's on us,
And
right?
correct, and so to point out what you just said and really kind of summarize it is, CAPS is a very specific program meeting. As you see here, these are a lot broader categories, okay? So these will house multiple layers of information into these committees to disaggregate and disseminate information. So, and then as you sit on them, all of that information from CAPS and these other ones will flow up there anyways, just depending on which one you sit on.
Yeah. There'll
It's
be a
just,
flow chart of those.
it's gonna be a paradigm shift for us.
So we're going to
Yes.
essentially have 2 structures. We're going to have committee structures and assignments.
Yes.
Right.
So there
Okay.
will be some that are assignments, like MTech
Is
will
an
be an
assignment.
assignment, right?
Right.
Or like
And then
PTA, that would be an assignment.
PTA may be, yeah, it'll be an assignment probably and a committee, and then we have to decide how many board members we wanna be.
I think you
having on
get to determine whether it's an assignment or a committee.
Yeah.
Or foundation might be an assignment. I don't know.
that. Yeah, and so all of those questions that you guys have, if you'll email them to me, should I have them copy you guys, or should I have them send it to me and I can then distill it down and send it on to you too?
If they send to you,
That'd be
then
best.
we work on it
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
together.
Yeah.
I have one more piece of feedback that I feel like is glaringly missing from here, which is technology. Technology is like a massive part of the district, and I'm not sure where.
Is that under
Well,
academic?
We also have facilities. It's all under
To me,
operations.
technology is a support role of all of those.
Right.
And that's why, to me, I don't think it's its own category, because it has to support every last one of those roles.
So, okay, but so, yes, I agree, that's what I'm saying, it's so massive, like, does it need to be like a higher up thing, right? I don't know.
Well, I think there's a difference between department and a
Yes.
committee that's working on
Yeah,
organizing stuff,
It's a
but
paradigm
they do
shift,
need to
it's a
be
paradigm
in
shift.
Right.
the committees, right? Same with HR, the HR department's not gonna be a committee, but
It'll be
their
informing.
department will be involved in,
I have one more comment. Strategic planning, I guess when I think of that, I think about like being at our conference and thinking like strategic planning for the district and like thinking about kind of we talked about going over our goals and kind of redirecting, and so but maybe that's different. That strategic planning with I'm just thinking that's not even a category. Maybe that's going to help direct all the operations.
strategic planning is part of
In my opinion,
everything.
strategic planning is the one red one you could eliminate and put in HR or something else, because strategic planning technically should be part of every last one of those committees.
Yeah, it should be informing all the
But I do
committees,
think
right?
it-
Whatever that comes out of that.
I'd vote to keep it red,
You can
because I
keep it,
think it's
I'm just saying
really
that to me is
important
the
part
weakest
of
one.
making sure that we have a vision and a direction and a strategic alignment looking forward enough. Yes, it informs, but so does policy informs, I mean,
Sure.
all of these inform each other in terms of
I
the way
see
you're
the
looking at
strategic
this,
one as
but-
being one that is an ad hoc committee, right? We form it because we're gonna like really dive into our goals
That's
and
right.
vision and stuff, and then once it's done.
Maybe, but all tech
then
companies
we-
have it, I mean, it is.
Then it
Yeah,
is
I'm not
part of
saying get
everything
rid
we
of
do,
it.
and it is part of every conversation, but it's not its own committee, 'cause the
So-
work of creating it is done.
So for the sake of time, please send me your ideas on strategic, like, I would really like those, cause I don't know what I think about that. So send me all of these ideas that you have, then I'll talk about it with the committee on committees, and then we'll take it over to these guys and then see what they have to say, and then we can just kind of redo the process, but I am very pleased with the progress that's been made here. It's actually this came up more quickly than I was expecting it to come up.
I'd
Like
love
this.
to try it and then see how it's going.
Yeah.
Like if people put a lot of time and thought into this, then you can try it out and.
When do you want all that?
What if we did what's reasonable? 2 weeks? 1 week?
Give
2
me
weeks?
2.
Give it to me in 2 weeks, and then that means
By
we'll
the
set up a
10th?
time to meet.
Will you send us all an email to remind us?
Yep.
So like March 14th?
Or by Friday the 10th, is that a week and a half?
Yeah.
Friday the 10th, that's up to you guys. Friday the 10th, give you enough time to look at everything and
Yeah, that's
get
good
back
news.
to me? I mean, it won't be on the agenda for that meeting, but I think that's a good thing to aim for. So Friday, March 10th, and then we'll meet the following week.
Just, if I can just say something to wrap it up, as the person who's not gonna be living with this new structure. I think the whole thing is negotiable. If you look at this and you say, I think it'd be better to do it this way or that way or whatever, I mean, the general concept here is we're trying to come up with a new structure that will facilitate communication and decision-making. That's really what, and transparency. Just, this is how it works, these are how decisions are made, this is how we communicate in this district. If there's elements of this that need to be adjusted, make your recommendations. I mean, this whole thing is still gotta be negotiated to get to a point where it really will do what we want it to
Mr.
do.
Wyatt says draft. Even in my conversation with Keith, we were like, oh, we don't have this, and so this is really just a jumping off point for us to talk about. If we waited until it was finished, then we wouldn't get anywhere. So I think if you guys will look at the questions that I have and then add anything else you have, email it to me, and then we'll set up a time to meet as a committee.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, thank you so much, Gina. All right, and to everyone who put a ton of work into that. Let's go with our last item, portable update. And I believe we're going to have you give us that update, Derek.
Yes, so here's kind of what's been going on with the portable. We got some more information that the portable has to move. If we want the construction schedule to stay on track. because part of that construction project in the next phase is the parking lot area and kind of the tearing down and everything. So even if we want construction to just continue on, it's gotta be removed. Now, it doesn't have to land over at Edgemont, but it still begs the question, we've got essentially a portable, we've gotta do something with. They have a need for it. So if the stance is, and I know that they're looking at other options, but beyond trying to go what other routes or options are available, they're looking into them, but we will have to move it just to move forward with the construction. Either to sell it, demo it, but I just got word about this last week.
What's the timeline on that? When does it have to be moved by?
Essentially the start of school, we still have they can.
Summer.
By this summer.
Yeah.
Or during the summer.
Or might be right after
It
school
could be,
starts,
'cause
right?
they might
Because
need
they
those.
might need it for the first couple weeks of school, depending when we finish the new wing, right?
And the wing, as of right now, they're still on track. I haven't heard anything about that, but it's kind of one of those things where if we wait to try to take it down, it's going to delay enough. Because what's happening is over the summer, from what I'm understanding, is when they're going to start tearing out and start demoing all that other area. So
if you want a parking lot, right?
I thought they're not demoing till we are in
the
new
parking
building.
lot and getting essentially that groundwork that's all right there.
That was my
Not the
understanding.
building, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, what was that? There were a couple.
Go ahead.
So I'm just saying, if you're saying they might take it out in the summer, but what if we're not in the new wing until almost fall break? Don't we need those 4 classrooms at Tempe for that time?
There are some classrooms, there are 2 classes that are in there right now.
I thought all 4 were being used.
I think there are 2, if I'm understanding correctly. Is it all 4 of them?
No.
Yeah. Nah, that's it. The 4 are being used, 2 will only be used at Edgemont. That's it. The 2 will be used at Edgemont, so the 2 other side would be unused at Edgemont.
And those other 2, what were we planning on with those?
Unfortunately, it's a single unit. It all has to be once. You can't put only half of them there. I already looked at that option.
So you're saying we have to put all 4 at Edgemont?
It's all like one.
It's all
It's a
one
quad
unit.
unit.
It's a quad.
unit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So I can go back and ask and push back on that if, and continue to say, if we hold it until the start of the year, what will that happen with the construction timeline? Because we're worried that if we don't hit the opening, these 4 classrooms will be needed. I absolutely can go back and ask that.
Well, I guess what I'm more interested, they have to move, that's fine, let's move them, but what I'm more interested in is, because the pushback here was putting them at Edgemont,
What
right?
about
So-
Western?
So are there other
Yeah,
options that
what are
also
the
make
other
sense?
needs? I mean, if there's not, I hesitate to put something that's too big over Edgemont because unused space will get used.
And then
Somebody
to
will
try and
move
take
in
it
and
back
take
is
it away.
tricky.
But if there's, like, what are our needs, what would we need this
That's
for?
the biggest need I've had come to me.
So if not, I mean, how much is it worth? Why, I mean, I'm surprised that we bought this in the first place. That we weren't just renting it, just for the meantime.
And I don't have any context on that, just because.
I think that
I
was
think
at
it was
our
a
As I
direction.
recall, it
Was
was
that a watch?
6s.
Okay.
It was board direction, right, when we were going to
Can't
do the
remember.
portable city at Timpview, and then we decided not to. We had already put in the order for a few of them, but not necessarily all of them. So we ended up
Okay.
with portables that we owned, if I remember correctly,
And
that's
I
what I
don't have
think.
the context on what happened when they were originally purchased.
They're pretty new, correct?
Will it have to be disassembled to be moved?
Yes.
How are Westridge's portables?
Full.
So do.
I thought they just got those
I
brand
thought
new
they
ones.
got new
They
ones.
just got brand new ones.
We got a couple new ones up there. I think there's still a couple of ones that are on the older side.
Do
The
they?
oldest ones were gotten rid of.
We also have the ones over at Independence with the adult ed.
Yeah,
I don't know how old those are.
correct. There's a couple, there's one or two up at Grandview.
Grandview, I was gonna say Grandview's, I mean, it could at least be a holding space for them if
Oh,
we decide we
absolutely.
don't want
If we
to
didn't
put
wanna
Silvery
put it,
Step on Edgemont.
if we didn't wanna put it at Edgemont, we could easily put it up at Grandview. There's another space that's up there available. So if that's the intent, we absolutely could go that direction.
Or replace an old one at Westridge, or
And I mean, we could definitely look, that's what we'd look at that route, is instead of putting the nicest one up there, do a rotation where if there's one that's old, put it over there and get that one out, and either get rid of it, so, you know, get rid of the one that we have leased, because I know we do have one or two that's leased still that we're trying to get out of, so there are options, it's just this was the request for that.
If
So.
my memory is correct, we had 6 portables at Westridge. 2 have been replaced, and therefore there are 4 that are still a little bit on the older side. There may be some value in simply replacing them with a quad, and whoever raised the issue last time about security, it could potentially help solve that a little bit.
Is there a
But
bathroom
let's
in
look
there?
into it. I don't know about that.
No,
It's
no,
got a
No.
bathroom.
no
No.
bathrooms.
So you still have to go into the building if there isn't.
Correct.
Anyway, we'll look at it, and Melanie, you got us some questions. Doug and company are working on those.
I just got it this afternoon, and I'll share it with the board,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
And I mean, if we're meeting a need, I guess I'm just trying to understand, I understand the security concern about moving them to Edgemont. I just wanna make sure though that if we have other campuses with portables also, anyway, I just wanna understand where really is the biggest need and use of these. I mean, I don't love full day kinder being out in portables because they have to walk back through, but I'm assuming you would shift other students into that. So I'm just trying to understand like the pros and cons, because if we're gonna put them just somewhere else where they would have the same con, for example, that maybe they're more needed here, I just wanna make sure we don't close off an option to use these resources in the way that supports our district and like most responsibly, I guess.
I think-
With your permission, why don't we just put this on the council agenda, and council will try to solve this problem and bring back a recommendation to you.
I don't know.
Okay, that sounds good.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's okay, I mean, I was just gonna say, it feels like the reasoning we don't want it there is very long-term focused rather than like, I mean,
Which I appreciate, but I'm just trying to.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, well, there's so many things that go into it. We're talking, Terry's brought up multiple times boundary changes, you know, why do we wanna add more to one school when other schools are fighting to have enough attendance, right?
If
Like,
we're gonna change boundaries, maybe Edgemont doesn't even need the portable.
so these are, right, so, but again, if you put it there, it's so hard to take it back.
Well,
Once
it's-
the space is there, it's so hard to take it back. And so then you get yourself into a situation where we're at with Westridge, where we have all these portables that we end up having to replace, and we have security issues
And
or
we're
whatever.
fully dependent on them.
And we're totally dependent on them.
Okay.
And it's really expensive to go put a portable in for a 1-year use or
Right,
2-year
okay,
use.
okay.
Right, that is.
And Keith answered in our last meeting that once his portable's gone in, it should never come out, except for this one case at Tinview, because we have to.
Cause it's, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Right,
That's
so
helpful.
we want, cause we're essentially putting something permanent there.
Okay, yeah,
Do we want
no,
that?
that makes sense.
Okay.
But it's good to ask that question.
Yeah.
You're right, if they really, really need it and have absolutely
Yeah.
no other space.
So
Right.
I've got it on here to have them give me the inventory, essentially, discuss inventory of portables and needs and.
Okay, okay. Thank you for taking that confidential, we appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, and that brings us to the end of our meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Okay, we are adjourned.
A second. Wait, I didn't get
I'm still not sure what needs a second and what doesn't.
Doesn't seem like adjourning
Close
never
the
needs
meeting,
a
you don't
second.
ever need it.
Yeah, sorry.
Your committee.
The
But
handbooks that we
policy,
have
I think
now.
I'm on policy.
Gina.
I can't remember.